Hello to everyone. In this lesson, we will talk about how to organize your ideas and prepare your public speech in order to be useful and noticed. I mentioned earlier that developing your speech skills will help you become a good communicator and leader. Being a good communicator is not about reading information from a projector, selling an idea, or promoting your product. Being a good communicator means staying in people's minds and making them think about your message after you've stepped off the stage. Many people are afraid to appear with a speech because they think that other speakers who know how to impress the audience are improvising, which is not the case. The most memorable speeches of successful people are carefully prepared and repeated so many times that even the situations in which they seem to have screwed up are staged moments. So let's talk about how to prepare a presentation. Planning is the most complicated stage. Today, I will talk about the arrangement and give you tips on how to capture the attention of the audience and organize the presentation with less consumption of time, energy, and emotions. It is natural for any presentation to have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. We will pay special attention to the introduction and closing of the presentation because they are the most easily memorized by the audience. That's why it is very important to get them right. First, you need to make an engaging introduction to gain the audience attention. Pique their curiosity and make them want to listen to the rest of your speech. I recommend using the funnel approach, presenting your ideas from the general to the specific. An introduction has 5 elements by which you get the attention of the audience, provide the relevance of the topic to the audience, establish personal credibility, state an idea, and then give a brief preview. The first step is to get your audience attention. A great way to get your audience attention is rhetorical questions. These are questions that might engage the audience but essentially don't require an immediate answer. But it will pique curiosity. For example, you could ask people who have ever thought about the problem you want to solve with your business idea to raise their hands. Or if they became aware that there is a given problem in the community. These questions will pique their interest and get them interested in the subject. Another easy way is to use a good quote. Select one that resonates with your topic. An example I used in previous lesson was Mark Twain's saying, "There are two types of public speakers in the world. The first are emotional, the other are liars." With this, I warn the audience that we all have emotion when we speak in public. And I drew attention to the message I wanted to emphasize. Another way to start a presentation is to use a visual illustration to grab audience attention. As an example, you can use an object that is part of your business idea. Or you could use an image which would have a link and lead the audience to what you want to present. Another way is to tell a short story. Everyone loves exciting and curious stories, but don't tell them for more than 30 seconds. It must contain important details and be personalized so that the audience will want to listen. After you have covered your ideas in general, it's time to gradually move to the core of your message and your specific story. The next step is to talk about the benefits the audience will receive from listening to your speech. And it's not easy because you have to put yourself in the listeners' minds and think about what they would like. In 2 or 3 sentences, you have to explain to them exactly what they will get at the end. How will they personally benefit? how they will learn something that can be used in practice, or how they will benefit from investing in your business idea. The next step is to establish your personal credibility. In some situations, you are introduced by someone who will give a brief about your experience. If you have not been introduced, speak concisely in 2 or 3 sentences about yourself or your personal experience. Say why you are the right person and how you might answer the question you raised at the beginning of your presentation. The fourth step is the statement of the central idea, and you need to present it as concisely as possible. It is the only sentence that must be memorized entirely. You should pause and verbalize it concisely and clearly so that it is perceived as the statement, the argument, the main point. This idea will be the red thread of your presentation until the end. That's why it has to be a memorable sentence. And the last part of this introduction funnel is to preview the main points that you will share. The preview should contain simple words or very short phrases. Don't go into details. Mention that your presentation will end with a viable solution to the existing problem. This way, you will make the audience curious to know the solution. These are the main parts of a presentation introduction, with an emphasis on attention grabbing as it is usually the key part. After that, you need to move to the body of the presentation. This is 85% of the presentation. Organize your main points in a logical way. Don't forget the details to support your ideas. Use examples, data, statistics, stories to support your main idea. Remember to make clear transition statements between main points. Listeners need to know when you are done talking about topic A and moving on to the topic B. After you have finished arguing the information, the conclusion follows, which represents the last 5–10% of the presentation. The first thing you need to do in the conclusion is to signal the end. You must say in conclusion or at the end. Many dismiss this as it sounds typical, but it is necessary. Even experienced speakers at the end of the presentation will say this is clearly signal that they are ending their speech. Although it seems a bit robotic, it is very good for the listeners. They will know you are nearing to the end and this is the clearest signal to them. The next thing you need to do is reinforce your main point. If listeners missed it during the introduction or body of the presentation, this is the last chance to emphasize the main point of the presentation. It is helpful for people to hear the emphasis of the main points. The next step is to call to action. Often in a presentation where there is a persuasive element, you want people to take an action. You need to tell them exactly what you recommend they do next. The call to action will be appropriate and feasible, and you could describe it in specific terms. And the last thing you should do is end the ending on a high note. It's very important to connect the opening by which you attract attention with the final closing. Thus, if you start with an opening story, you need to accentuate its echo. If you start with a quote, come back to it. If you started with an illustration, then recall it. The public loves it. It's satisfying when people understand why you used it in the first place. And for you, it will be a satisfaction that you have really supported an idea and come full circle. It takes a little art and skill, but if you carefully select the element that grabs attention at the beginning, it will help set up the ending. I remind you that at the beginning of the lesson, we use the image that induces the idea that through a different perspective, you can find new opportunities. This was my induced message. It matters from which perspective you look at a problem and what you want to emphasize or solve with your ideas. At the end of your presentation, it is good to thank the audience, smile, wait 2 seconds, and then you can leave. If there is a question and answer session, you could end with a phrase that makes them even more curious and eager to have their questions answered. As an example, I can tell you from my experience when I had to present a company from Moldova to a foreign audience, which did not know much about our country. I ended the presentation with some images of extraordinary views from Moldova. As they looked with interest at the final images, I said, "Thank you for your attention. You are invited to know the hospitality of the Moldovans. But don't forget that you have to take off your shoes." And I ended on a high note. The last sentence made them curious and they became interested in what I told them, asking questions and discussing among themselves. In conclusion, I recommend that you consider the information and advices presented in today's lesson. Review these steps when preparing your public presentation, and you'll find they help. I wish you motivation, enthusiasm, dedication, and patience. You will need them to continue your public speaking practice so that you can become a good communicator. Thank you for watching this lesson. See you.